All right, thanks for joining me again. This is the third in a series of short videos about the Enneagram Leadership Development course and workshop. Um, Thanks again for joining. We've been talking about some very interesting things here. And the things that I want to really take a look at with you today kind of builds on what we were doing previously. And we were talking about when you get the MLEI, what are you looking for? What do you look at? That whole thing, looking at the numbers, maturity, activity, and all that kind of stuff. What does that mean? How does that start working out? Then, based upon that, you start asking them more interesting questions about who they are, how they work, showing them some insight about what's going on here. That can be very, very powerful. And the problem with that is obviously you may not have their MLEI results yet, right? So what do you do if you don't have their MLEI results and you're kind of fishing around? Well, John's got a great series of questions here, behavioral interview questions. They're great. There's other ways you can get to know people too. It's a kind of be like the thing, oh, you live in Chicago. I went to Chicago before and that was great. It was cold in the winter, or, Disney World, or I'm a fisher, or I'm a hunter, or, I love travel, whatever those stuff things are. Those kind of make you feel kind of let down the hair a little bit socially. That's a little bit of tingly, connection. But that's kind of social level. That's not really necessarily significant. You want a significant connection here. How fast do you want to have a significant connection to the to your coachee or to the prospective client that you might have? How quickly do you want that to happen? Well, the answer is as soon as possible, right? You want it as quickly as you possibly can get it. So you can go ask these different kinds of questions and all that kind of stuff. But what are you really looking for? Are you just are you just looking for information, just kind of get to know each other? That is it just informational, or is there something else that's going on there? Is there another way to connect with them more significantly? Significantly meaning there's an emotional kind of things that kind of starts to open up for you. You can start seeing things differently. They start seeing things differently. And so that's what we're looking for. And what I was talking about previously was the opportunity to validate. You see, there's two kinds of things. You probably know this already. Validating people based upon what they do or what they have done or what they want to do. That's kind of conditional validation. Or there's the deeper validation of who they are, how they really work, how they really tick. Is that going back to, clock maker or clock repair person? How do they really work? What's going on? And so what any kind of questions are really about at some level, it's not just about what they've done or what they're doing now or what they want to do, goals and stuff like that. It's really about hearing them. Again, it's back to that seeing and believing stuff, seeing, believing, becoming. It's really about that. So as you listen to them, even though you don't have their MLEI or any other surveys done on them, can you figure out how they work? Can you do that? Well, if you've got the training and the MLEI, different leadership styles, you understand that, how they work in different kinds of ways. If you understand that, you can start reading them pretty quickly. The point of that is, again, to validate them, to validate them. Something happens when you start validating people that you're just meeting, when you're just getting to know them. It can be a little off-putting at first because they're not used to being validated unconditionally for who they are. They're more conditioned to be validated for what they do, which is not, of course, as satisfying. But if you start validating for who they are, things start to change. I'll give you an example. I was talking to somebody, a great coach over there in England, a very interesting guy, very dynamic kind of a guy. And he presents himself very much as a driver. The energy, all that stuff he does, it's just obvious driver stuff. And then, ironically, he also presents himself as a person who's a helper. So he's both this driver leader, high level of competitiveness, also high level if I want to help people out. We talked about it. So how do you? But sometimes when you're a driver, you can push people away, and yet you want to help people. We kind of talked about that. And I kept looking at his behavior because when you validate somebody and it's the right validation, something happens. And what happens is they start to calm down. It's very wild. You can actually see them calming down. How interesting. Why would they calm down? Because you're seeing them for who they are. And they recognize, and it's not just an intellectual recognition, it is a visceral recognition. It's a bodyal recognition. The body and the mind recognize somebody sees me. And I wasn't seeing that with him. He was going in circles. He kept looping a whole bunch of stuff, da, 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 back and forth, driver, helper, driver, helper, helper, driver. So but as I did validate that, something did happen. Wasn't the body relaxing? It was the language. The language changed, and it changed significantly. He was still kind of, but his language changed, and he started showing that what he really was a visionary. He was an activist, clearly. But he disguised it with all this other stuff of doing, doing, doing. Get it? Do you see what I'm saying? He's covering him, who he is, with doing, doing, driving, helping, drive. That's what he's doing. But once we validated that, he started talking in a different language about vision. I said to him, you are quite a visionary person. And he kind of paused and said, yeah, I am. I am a visionary person. I am. I see. I learn by seeing. Yes, I'm visual, and he was just kind of working that through. His brain was working that through about being a visionary and seeing, and it was a change. It was see that's that significant moment. That's that significant connection that just happened right there. And as he was mulling that over, he said, after kind of talking it through a few times, putting it in his mouth and hearing it and that kind of stuff, he finally said, nobody's ever said that to me. He said, and yes, I am. I am, I am a visionary person. It all changed. It all changed. Validation, seeing. And so as we were wrapping this whole thing up, instead of this very frenetic, energetic looping and going this way and that way about it, trying to what? Prove. That's what he's doing. He's proving. He's trying to prove his worth as being that kind of an individual. He's proving. You can never prove yourself enough. So you do keep looping. And I asked him the question, so how are you going to resolve this particular thing that you wanted to do? He changed. He'd been settling down, calming down, but his brain was now in a different place. And you could see what he was talking about. He said very calmly, his body settled down, mind settled down. He said, I must now let go. Hear that? I must let go, turn it over to them, and move on. Significant connections can happen very quickly if you know what to look for and what to say in terms of the validation factor. Because at that point, everything else starts to open up. Once the validation happens and you can see them and they get that you see them, it changes everything. It changes everything. Give another example, quick example here of a woman I'm working with coming in. She's going into retirement. She's starting her own coaching business. She's been in the financial business for a long time, and you know how that is. A lot of pressure. Da 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 da. Very 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 responsible. But really, I'm talking about really really responsible person. Gets things done. Expects things to get done. Da 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 da. Really good. Her teams. This and that. Da da da. Well, she doesn't have any of that anymore. She's retired. She's got family now that she's dealing with. And still the brain is kind of going, got to get things going, go expect people to do things. Da, 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 da. And I'm validating her saying, you're really smart, aren't you? You're a very smart woman. I can hear you're very smart. You're very organized. I can hear that. And you're kind of a driver. You're kind of yeah, let's get things done. I can hear that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you kind of work with, people in these particular ways. She kind of leans into, teamwork. This other part that was really interesting that she also, when they let her down, right? She kind of goes into the other kind of teamwork, which is the helper. Really interesting, right? Really interesting. And the reason I knew that in some ways the helper, the strategic leader, was stronger than probably the team leader was what she said. She said two things. She said, when I do things for other people, I'm doing them for them. I do things for people. And then when they don't follow through, I feel let down. Man, if you're listening, if you understand what she said, she just unpiled her life in just a few sentences. Ah, that's how that works. Okay. So I'm validating this and that. Well, that's da, 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 da. And as she's getting validated, when people are validating what they do, again, what do they feel? Relaxed, because they feel like they don't have to prove themselves. So we're validating like crazy, crazy. Don't have to prove. I don't have to show up. I don't have to put on a pose. I don't have to posture. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to do all this stuff, all this armoring, right? That's all this stuff because I'm validated. And then we get to the point where, I got to do something about the stress. What do I do about the stress? Da, da, da. And we've been talking this through. I asked her a question at the very end. It said, got a couple of choices here. Which way are you going to go? And she's and I knew there was two options she could choose. She could stay really serious, or she could go in a completely different direction. And to my surprise and my amazement, she went in the other direction. She didn't get serious. More responsibilities. Work harder. Try harder. She didn't do that. She just kind of let it all down. She said, I'm going to go out and I'm going to enjoy myself more. I'm going to socialize more. You could see her body relax. A smile came on her face. Her eyes lit up. All this wonderful stuff because of validation, seeing her for who she is. Again, this significant connection. Now, why do you want to get to the significant connection as quickly as you possibly can? Because what it does, it sets up a whole series of changes. I'm going to just read through these changes. I wrote them down quickly here. These changes are not superficial, they're not social, they're significant, they're deep. When you have that kind of connection, this is what this whole thing about Enneagram leadership development course and a workshop is all about. This is all about what it is about and how to use this model that John has put together with the MLEI and the Enneagram leadership view and lens and all that kind of stuff. So when you know how to use it, even if you don't have their MLEI, but you know it, you're trained on it, you really understand how it works. Here's what happens. That significant moment, because of the way you're working differently now, the way you're seeing it differently, the way you're believing it differently, giving them a chance to start becoming differently, what it does, it starts changing them. That moment, both these people I talked about, they changed. They changed. They changed the way they saw themselves as acceptable, as okay. They also changed the way they saw me, which is important. They just didn't see me as a coach. They saw me as somebody who's insightful, somebody who is helpful, somebody that really gets them. And so in that, it also changed our relationship. The relationship suddenly just changed in that instant. And it changes you. It changes you as a coach. That moment, when that moment happens, and there's that connection, you watch them change, and suddenly they're presenting themselves as they really are, that changes you. And so it also then changes their direction. It changes their direction in terms of who they are now. They see themselves differently, and they're going to go. It also changes you in that relationship and how you see it now, and where it is you can go with them. So this whole idea of the significant connection is no small matter. It is a huge matter. It is a masterful matter. Because once you can get in there as quickly as you can without hurrying it, without forcing it, without trying a whole bunch of things, but just knowing what to look for, how to see it, what to do with it, how to start moving the belief around in terms of not what they're doing, but in terms of who they are and validating it and watching how when they respond to the validation, how that changes things. It's not about just setting the goals and making the plans. This is something very different. And this is what this training does. It teaches you how to read the leader. You become a leader reader. That's what you become. You now see them as to who they are as a leader, and behind that, even the person, that talent behind that leader stuff that they've got going on there. It changes you, which allows you to help them change, which allows them to change where they're going and how they see themselves and what the possibilities are. It's that, and you see it in their faces. You see it on their faces. There's something that happens with their smile. There's something that happens with their eyes. Just not accomplishing something. It's something that happens. This is what this training is all about. So, got any questions? Let me know. Send me an email. But this is where we're going. This is a different way of coaching. This is a different way of going about doing it that gets to much deeper levels. And it's how you bring what you know, bring who you are to help them in different ways that I'm going to say to you that very, very rarely do they ever have that. More importantly, do they really get it so quickly? You can start delivering up the goodies quickly, which should change everything in terms of the flow, the direction, the arc, the journey that you take them on. Get it handled sooner. Get that moment happening sooner rather than 3 or 4 or 5 weeks into it. What if it could happen right away? How much more can you get done? How much more growth will they get through? Anyway, you get what I'm talking about. That's it for now. Thanks for tuning in. Spread the word. Tell others about it. Tell them what we're doing here. Share what it is that you know. Share what it is that you're learning. Let me know what it is you're learning. And I look forward to chatting with you next week. All right, then. All the best. Make it a great weekend.